The Time Machine Did It, Chapter 21. I got into my Rolls-Royce, which was parked in front of the Burley Science Museum, drove past the Burley Library and the fabulous Burley Convention Center, and pulled up to my office in the Burley Building. It's located on the corner of Burley and Burley, so it's an easy address to remember. All of the parking places in front of me were reserved for me, so I could take my pick. Today I decided to park in the extra big one. I got out of the car, walked past the line of statues of me, and went into the building. I walked into my office and looked around with satisfaction. All the photos and wise sayings I had on the wall were now framed in 14-karat gold. Neither one of my crappy chairs would ever fall over again now. I had used some of my vast wealth to get the leg on that one chair fixed. My secretary was looking around the office, frowning, more confused than usual. On her head was a hat that was completely unknown to her. "What happened to the office? It's different," she said. "And where did I get this hat?" I sat back in my chair, confident that it wouldn't tip over, and gave her the quick summary of what I've told you, then told her what I hadn't told Mandible about my last visit to 1941. I had wanted to use the figurine to get the city back the way I remembered it, law-abiding and peaceful, with no corrupt cops chasing me through time, but I didn't want Tom Mandible to get off scot-free. So on my last trip to 1941, I took the figurine to my grandfather and told him it was valuable evidence that he could use to blackmail the city's wealthy district attorney. I said if he used it right, he could make a fortune with it. The only condition was that he had to build libraries, museums, etc., and stick my name prominently on each one. It took a while to explain all this to him because we Burleys have never been very smart, but he finally got it. And once he understood the concept, he turned out to be a real first-class blackmailer. He managed to bleed Tom Mandible so dry that the DA, infuriated at the way he was robbed of his ill-gotten gains, clamped down even harder on crime in the city. So the city ended up becoming even nicer and safer than it had been before. Of course, nothing in life works perfectly. The Burley family was never very good with money, so the bulk of our family fortune got pissed away in one way or another, a lot of it in trying to blackmail other public officials with other figurines. But there was still a comfortable amount left over when I came along. Elizabeth didn't believe very much of this story. It made me sound smart, which she knew I wasn't. But she liked the office better, and the hat was okay. So she didn't press the matter. She didn't have time to talk about it anymore today anyway. She had to go home now. That part in her hair was bothering her again. I watched her go and got out a cigar. It's not often that I do something smart, but it happens sometimes, and when it does, I like to celebrate. I started to light the cigar with a $20 bill, then changed my mind and lit it with a stamp. Then I noticed a stack of dust-covered correspondence on my desk that appeared to have been waiting there for me since 1941. There were overdue hotel bills, thank-you notes from my grandfather and the Andrews sisters, offers to join the Wire Recorder Spool of the Month Club, etc. I threw them all away. Too late to answer them now. Then a very old, dust-covered mechanic came into my office. It was that guy who had tried to build a time machine for me in 1941. I remembered now that I had never paid him. He remembered it too. "You owe me $8, he said. He held out a dust-covered bill. I examined it for a moment, then shrugged and paid him. It was only $8. It would have cost more than that to fight him in court or hire someone to kill him. We rich guys always have to look at things from the financial angle. That's our curse." He took the money and shuffled off, as happy as a really old guy with $8 can be. Then a representative of our federal government showed up and presented me with a bill for World War II. I told him there must be some mistake. This bill couldn't be for me. This must be one of those rare instances that comes along maybe once in a generation, when the government is full of shit. He insisted it was a legitimate obligation owed by me because of that telegram I hadn't sent. We did a lot of back and forth about what telegram, you know what telegram, for quite a while. I was starting to have a pretty good time when I suddenly remembered what telegram he was talking about. I had made several attempts during my stay in 1941 to send telegrams to the future. Every time someone new started working at the telegraph office, I gave it another try, but nothing ever came of it. One of the times, an agitated Japanese man was in line behind me. He was trying to get off an urgent telegram to the Imperial Japanese Fleet. He kept trying to move in front of me, but every time he did, I just gave him the old Burley get back there. Finally, he changed his tactics and tried to get me to send the message for him. He handed me a scrawled message. I took it. I promised I would send it when I was done with what I was doing, unless I forgot about it. Stuck the message in my pocket and forgot about it. Now that I remember the telegram, I was curious as to what it said. I walked over to a trophy case that had, among other prized items, a pair of heavily worn trousers labeled Time Travel Pants. I reached in the back pocket, pulled out the yellow telegram, and read it. It said, "Don't attack Pearl Harbor." I walked back to my desk and looked over the itemized list of expenses I was being billed for. It said I was responsible for the loss of 139,000 tanks, 2,800 ships, 268,000 airplanes. Were there really that many airplanes? And was expected to pay for $60 million, 60 million funerals. I put the bill down and shook my head. I admit I'm solely to blame for the war in the Pacific, but Hitler handled the European end of the thing, so he's at least as responsible for World War II as I am. Can't you bill him for some of these expenses? The government official shook his head. He's dead. Shit. We haggled for a while, then I agreed to give them $80 a month until it was all paid off. I figured I got off easy. I thought that I tied up all the loose ends until Mandible came in one day with his tramp lawyer. They said they were suing me. I asked what for. The lawyer said I was liable for changing the course of human events in a way that was detrimental to his client. They had a pretty good case, being so right and everything, but I couldn't think the case would ever get to trial. The tramp life has gotten to them both, and pretty soon they had mostly forgotten about me and were fighting over my cigar butt. I gave them a bottle of cheap wine. Then I waited until they were unconscious and settled the matter out of court by pushing them out of window. There's not too much left to tell. Professor Groggins, I've heard, is working on a machine that talks about the weather, but doesn't do anything about it. That will save everybody a lot of time. At my request, he used his Mark VI time machine to go back in time and fix up most of the past that I had wrecked. He said there were a couple of things he couldn't change back because I just screwed them up too bad. So if you're upset that we had a depression in the 1930s and that Richard Nixon was elected president twice, instead of being Lou Costello's partner in the movies, I guess you can't blame me for that. I guess you can blame me for that. As for me personally, the only real change in my life, aside from the increase in my bank account, is that there are now 14 of me living around town in different apartments. We avoid each other when we see each other on the street, maybe just a nod, but nothing more. It's a little unnerving, but doesn't seem to cause any harm otherwise, except, of course, that now I've got a lot more competition in the detective business in this town. That's just what I need at this point. That's the end of the book, everybody. At the end here it says, books by John Swartzwelder, The Time Machine Did It, Double Wonderful, How I Conquered Your Planet, The Exploding Detective, Dead Men Scare Me Stupid, Earth vs. Everybody, The Last Detective Alive, and The 50-Foot Detective. I've read The Exploding Detective. It's pretty good. Okay, there's a copyright on here and other stuff. That's a whole book, everybody. If you made it this far, hey, let me know. Comment on YouTube. Leave a comment in a 5-star rating on iTunes or whatever. Send me an email. Talk to me in person if we're ever talking to each other in person ever again. But good luck out there. Time Machine did it. All right, we did it.